Varadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Narasimha Paramansa Parivrajagate Rishtottara Satat Shri Srimad Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Narasimha Paramansa Parivrajagate Rishtottara Satat Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, text number 22 onwards. There are all short purports, so we'll read We'll read a few verses. Idrug griham tat pashyanti. Idrug griham tat pashyanti. Idrug griham tat pashyanti. Na ati pritena cetasa. Nati pritena cetasa. Nati pritena cetasa. Sarva bhuta ashaya abhijnaha. Sarva bhuta ashaya abhijnaha. Sarva bhuta ashaya abhijnaha. Pravochat kardamaha swayam. Pravochat kardamaha swayam. Pravochat kardamaha swayam. Idrigriham tat pashyanti. Nati pritena cetasa. Sarva bhutasaya abhijnaha. Pravochat kardamaha swayam. Idrigriham tat pashyanti. Nati pritena cetasa. Sarva bhutasaya abhijnaha. Pravochat kardamaha swayam. Idrik, such, griham, house, tat, that, pashyanti, looking at, na ati pritena, not much pleased, cetasa, with a heart, sarva bhuta, of everyone, ashaya abhijnaha, understanding the heart, pravochat, he addressed, kardamaha, kardama, swayam, personally. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. When he saw Devahuti looking at the gigantic opulent palace with a displeased heart, Kardama Muni could understand her feelings because he could study the heart of anyone. Thus he personally addressed his wife as follows. Kindly repeat. When he saw Devahuti looking at the gigantic opulent palace with a displeased heart, Kardama Muni could understand her feelings because he could study the heart of anyone. Thus he personally addressed his wife as follows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Devahuti had spent a long time in the hermitage, not taking much care of her body. She was covered with dirt and her clothing was not very nice. Kardama Muni was surprised that he could produce such a palace, and similarly his wife, Devahuti, was also astonished. How could she live in that opulent palace? Kardama Muni could understand her astonishment, and thus he spoke as follows. The Sannyasa Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mokam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So here we are seeing how the wonderful palace created by Kardama Muni is quite astounding, even for Kardama Muni himself as well as his wife Devahuti. So it's mentioned here that when Devahuti saw this wonderful opulent palace made with all jewels, diamonds and all such kind of opulent stuff, with lot of wonderful water bodies, beautiful swans, pigeons, etc., both live as well as artificial, Devahuti was not pleased. Na ati pritena. She was not pleased when she saw this. Why? Kardama Muni could understand her feelings, because as Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, Devahuti had spent a long time in the hermitage. She had been the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. She had been living in the palace. She was not new to this kind of opulent lifestyle. Opulent palace with lot of servants, gold, jewels, diamonds. She was used to all that. But she had given it up when she got married to Kardama Muni, and she had voluntarily accepted a life of austerity. And so, as the wife of a rishi, being a very dutiful and chaste wife, she understood the mind of her husband, Kardama Muni, as it has been described previously. And she served him in every way possible to please him. Basically, she partook of the priorities and the desires of her husband. Kardama Muni was interested in spiritual advancement. He was not interested in material advancement. So Devahuti also, adopting a similar consciousness, she understood that her husband, if she has to please her husband, and since she loved him a lot, she wanted to please him, she wanted to see him happy. And she knew that that is possible only when he is engaged in spiritual activities. So, and to ensure that Kardama Muni's mind remained focused on spiritual activities, Devahuti also voluntarily gave up all her opulent dressing and jewels and all those kind of things. She adopted a very simple dressing style, more conducive, more appropriate to the life of a mendicant or a hermit living in a hut in the forest. And she did not take much care of her body, meaning she was not interested in taking care of how good she was looking. And so because of that, she was covered with dirt. Her clothing had become old, torn, and that was also not very neat and clean. It was also dirty. Dirty in the sense it was stained, and it was not new cloth. It was not shining bright and looking very good looking. No. She was wearing old cloth, used cloth, and she was not looking very beautiful, as it will be described in the next few verses. Her hair had also become matted. So she consciously did not want to appear good looking so that Kardama Muni's mind might get deviated. She did not want that her husband should get attracted to her beauty, and thus his mind get diverted from his spiritual activities. And so she engaged in a life of in a very simple lifestyle, living a life of austerity, adopting the same principles as her husband Kardama. And so both of them had a very harmonious family life. Both the husband and the wife, their goal is focused on spiritual life, on the same goal. Therefore, both of them understood each other very well and everything went very smoothly. And Kardama Muni on his part, although he was engaged in spiritual activities, when he saw that his wife had given up all her womanly attributes, she was not taking care of her body, she was totally dedicated to partnering Kardama Muni in his spiritual activities, and how she had sacrificed her own likes and dislikes in order to please Kardama Muni. Naturally, Kardama Muni became very compassionate upon her, and therefore he wanted to grant her, he wanted to bless her with love of Godhead. And Devahuti, when she heard her husband blessing her, that he wanted to grace her with love of Godhead, she expressed herself. What did she express herself? She said that she would like to enjoy the benefits of love of Godhead after her one desire to have children born of Kardama Muni is fulfilled. As Prabhupada explained in the previous purports, it is natural for a woman who is married to a great husband to desire to have children through him, because the children are also expected to be of great quality when they are born from such high parentage. So we can see here how immediately when Kardama Muni also understood his wife's desire, he immediately created this wonderful palace, and with all wonderful facilities. And when Devahuti saw that, she was not very pleased. Although she herself had asked her husband that I desire to have children, and so please make necessary arrangements so that we can have children. But then it is natural that in a hermitage, where it is a thatched cottage, you have mud flooring and not any great facilities for that kind of union between a husband and a wife, that hermitage was not the suitable place for them to procreate. So therefore, Kardama Muni had produced this palace. So then why was Devahuti dissatisfied upon seeing this wonderful creation? Because she knew that such an opulent palace she could not occupy in her current state, where she was looking very dirty, matted hair and all soiled clothes. And here the whole mansion is filled with jewels and diamonds and all kinds of valuables, and all filled with all kinds of maid servants who are looking very beautiful and opulently dressed. Compared to the maid servants, Devahuti is supposed to be their mistress. She is looking so badly dressed. So naturally, she was not very comfortable. And so that was why she was looking a little bit uncomfortable when she saw the big mansion created by Kardama Muni. And Kardama Muni immediately understood, and he took steps to resolve the matter, as we will see in the upcoming verses. So we can see here how when a man and a woman combine together, when they come together in family life, there is so much elaborate arrangement required. Kardama Muni was living in a hermitage. He was fully satisfied living in a hermitage with very minimum requirements. He must have been sleeping on a simple straw mat. The cottage itself would have been a one-room cottage with mud flooring and thatched roof. And in the morning he will go to the river or some lake close by and have his bath there, morning ablutions. So very comfortable. He was very happy in such kind of simple, natural environments. But still, for the sake of associating with his wife, he had to create a huge mansion, very opulent, filled with wonderful rooms, lot of maid servants. All these kind of opulent arrangements were required when he had to associate with his wife in family life. This is the nature of family life. Nature of family life is when the moment a man and a woman get married, immediately they have to think of a suitable house. They have to think of a suitable source of revenue to maintain themselves. They have to think of the future of the children. They have to think of how they will present themselves in front of their relatives. So many things come into consideration. Ata griha kshetra suta apta vittair janasya mohoyam aham mameti. It all starts like that. The moment a man thinks of marrying a woman, what happens? He has to think, oh, if I have to get married, first thing when I go and to see the girls people will ask, what is the boy doing for a living? So I have to have a good job. I have to have a good business. Something should be there in the hand. Otherwise, what face will I show to the girl's parents when I go? What will I tell them? That I am unemployed? I don't have a good source of income? Then nobody will give their daughter to me. So, first thing he thinks is, I have to have a source of revenue. And then the parents of the girl will ask, where will you live? Where will you keep my daughter? So where I am living in the street, I am living in a hut in a slum, will any parents from a good household give their daughter? No, they will say, Arey Baba, first you get a good house before you come and ask for the hand of my daughter in marriage. So he has to think, I have to have a good house. At least one good rented apartment should be there. Otherwise, take a bank loan, have an EMI, somehow buy one house. Then I can go and confidently I can approach the girl's parents and tell them, I have got a house, I can keep and I have got a good job, I have got this much salary, I can maintain your daughter, then I can get married. So, now what happens is, the moment a person makes all this arrangement, naturally he becomes caught up in the arrangements, because it is not easy to maintain a big house. And if you have taken, especially in today's world, everybody buys a house on EMI. Now you have to, every month on month, that EMI will keep coming. And if you don't pay, the bank people will come and they will throw you out of the house. You will be on the street next day. So there is so much anxiety that you have to take to ensure that month on month you keep paying the EMIs. And so much anxiety has already taken. And then what happens? Ata griha kshetra suta apta. Now that he has got a house, he has got a good job, he has got a wife. Now what next? Children. Naturally, you have to have children. Otherwise, the woman will not be satisfied. Like you are seeing, Kardama Muni and Devahuti, they were living in a hermitage, they were focused on spiritual life. Still, that propensity, that desire was there in Devahuti's heart, that I should also have children. Although she knew, my husband is not interested in all this. He is a great rishi. And advancement in spiritual life is the real thing. And her husband is also offering, take love of Godhead. But what is her response? First, I want children. This is natural for every woman. It is natural for a woman to expect to have children. So the moment a man has got married, he has got a good house, he has got a job, he has got married, he has brought the wife home, natural that you have to have children. You cannot think of a family life without children. It is a house is not a house and a marriage is not a marriage until you have children. Actually, in the Shastras it is said, Putrarthe kriyate bharya. A man has to marry a woman and create a family household. For what? For begetting children. Otherwise, why should one get married? No need of marriage. If the purpose in getting married is to satisfy one's lusty desires, for that marriage is not required. So, but then people get, so the real purpose of getting married is to procreate, is to have children. So, the moment a person gets married, naturally next expectation is children. And once children are born, what happens? You have to take care of their education, you have to maintain them. Added pressure of more revenue generation, you have to earn more money. You not only have to pay the EMI, you not only have to maintain the wife, you also have to maintain the children. And you have to save money for the future. When the children grow up, the children will ask, Father, what did you do for me? What have you left behind for me? At least I should give them a good education. And today education costs a lot of money. When I was studying in my parents, my sister and I, both of them, my parents wanted us to get good education. But they were very particular that my sister, because she is a girl child, she has to get very good education. So they put her in a very good school, convent school, lot of fees they had to pay. So they couldn't afford to give me a kind of convent school like that. So they put me into a school where annual fees was 200 rupees. So, but of course it was not a bad school. It was the number 2 school in Bangalore, National High School. It was run by one academician, so he wanted to give education at as low cost as possible. So, 200 rupees a year, 7th, 8th, 9th, 8th, 9th, 10th standard, you can imagine. Today's world, if you have to send a child to 8th standard, you have to spend minimum 1 to 1.5 lakh rupees, school fees per year. I studied for 200 rupees. And then I got, passed out of school, college, then got into engineering college. Engineering college, I got into a merit seat, fortunately. So annual fees was 2,000 rupees. Today, can you imagine 2,000 rupees? Anybody? So total my 4 years of engineering, my college fees was 8,000 rupees. Today, if anybody has to go to a good engineering college and get educated, he has to spend minimum 4-5 lakh rupees. And for that, you have to take an education loan. And most of the people study on loan. So their life itself starts with credit. In fact, Chanakya Pandit says, happy is the man who lives debt-free. The moment you take a debt, the moment you have a loan on your head, it's a great anxiety. And today's world, people are taught, you begin your life with debt. Moment you step out of college, pressure is immediately started. You have to have a campus recruitment, you have to get a job, otherwise how will you, the moment the 4th year is over of your engineering, of your studies, you immediately start repaying the loan. Where will you get the money from? Pressure has already started. And then you get married, and then you have to have a house, that is also on EMI. And then you have to have a phone, that is also on EMI. Everything EMI, and the house utensils, you want to buy a fridge, that is also on EMI. Everything is on EMI. Then ultimately what is left for you to spend in the home? Nothing will be left. One friend I had, he was telling me, he got a very good job in Honeywell or something like that, and he was getting 1 lakh rupees salary. So I was telling him, good yaar, you got a great job and good salary. You must be enjoying life. He said, what enjoying life, Prabhu? One car I have bought. Now for that EMI I have to pay 25,000 per month. Then house EMI, another 30,000 I have to pay. 55,000 gone there. Then the fridge, this TV, this, that, another 20,000 gone. Practically at the end of the month, for me to spend, I have 10,000 rupees in that. With a 1 lakh rupees salary, he has got only 10,000 to spend every month. And that also he has to think 10 times, how I have to spend, any medical expenses, how will I manage? This is modern day life. So, this is the nature of family life. The moment one takes a family life, one has to take all this kind of anxiety. And then and nowadays, Griha Kshetra Sutta, rearing children is not easy. You have to take a loan for even their education also. Your house loan is already running. Your vehicle loan is running. Your TV and mobile loan is running. Now, to educate the child also, you have to take loan. So, loan upon loan you are taking. And then, once the children are grown up, then you have to take care of their marriage. They have to get married. And then, when they get married, you have to call all the relatives and show to them how big a wedding you are having. You have a splash and the kind of money you have to spend to show off to the relatives. So, Apta. So, all the relatives, friends, everybody you have to show off. You have got a very wonderful family. You got a successful family. You got so much money. So, take a loan and conduct the marriage also. For that also take a loan. So, eventually the man dies in debt, and then his children have to fulfill that loan. So, they also keep running the loan. So, like this, what happens is, Ata Griha Kshetra Sutapta Vittair Janasya Mohoyam. For them, people, money is the most important thing in life. Without money, they cannot dream of how they can live. So, earning money becomes the most important thing in life. That is how we can see Today's world, everything is centered around money. You go to a college for education, you are not going to college for educating, for getting educated. You are going to college so that you can get a good placement in a good company, so that you can get good salary. Today, colleges are measured by how much is the average annual package in the placement that the students get from the college. You can see big billboards, especially in North India and all. For colleges, they put big billboards on the highways. 100% placement this year. So-and-so college, come and enroll yourself. And this is the average annual package. Our students got placed in Microsoft, they got placed in Apple, they got placed here, they got placed there. So this is the advertisement. They are not advertising, come to our college, we'll educate you very nicely. No. We'll ensure that you get a good paying job. Because money has become so important today. Education is secondary. What kind of job you have and how much money you are able to generate becomes more important. So, when people get entangled like this in family, children, house, and then a good source of revenue, what happens is, Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. People become bewildered in the illusion. This body is me, aham mameti, and this is mine. These children are mine, this house is mine, this is my wife, this is my husband, this is my family, this is my job, this is my money in the bank account. Janasya mohoyam aham mameti. And whole life one keeps struggling like this, and one fine day one will die. And when one dies, what happens? All that I was thinking, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, I have to leave behind and go. Nothing I am going to take with me. But you see, this illusion has been fortified, it has been solidified by my running after money. Why? Because of the original reason. What was the original root cause for me running after money? My family life. So therefore, we can understand how family life can become very entangling. And it can create great anxiety for creating various arrangements required for keeping one's family life running. Of course, in the case of Kardama Muni, he did not have to take any anxiety because he was a great yogi. So, just like that, he wished, and there was a big palace with a lot of servants, all arrangements was there. But ordinary man is not like that. If he has to have one small house also, small hut also, he has to struggle so much. This is the nature of family life within this material world. And therefore, in the Shastras, such a life is called a Grihamedi life, where the life of the husband and wife is centered simply around these kind of things. What is that? One is the sex attraction between the man and the woman, and the desire to procreate, to have children, and to accumulate wealth. That's all. This is the whole goal of life of a Grihamedi. Such a life is condemned because it only creates anxiety and deepens one's illusion that I am the body and everything related to the body is mine. So, if we want to become free from this illusion, and if we want to become free from that anxiety of having to make elaborate arrangements and maintain one's family, then the only way is to take the path of Krishna consciousness. We have to adopt a spiritual life. We have to make Krishna the center of our life. Then all such arrangements will happen in due course of time. One is not too much affected by desires for elaborate arrangements for all these activities. So whatever arrangement comes of its own accord by one's karma, one is satisfied with that, and one's focus is on spiritual life, and both husband and wife are focused on spiritual development. Then the pressure of material arrangements and advancement is reduced, and so one can live a sublime life, and one can ultimately go back to Godhead. One can achieve a life where there is no more repeated birth and death. And we can see how in the case of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, the same sex life which is so much condemned in the Vedic life is highly glorified, because the center of their life was Krishna, and so therefore their coming together had a glorious purpose and it had a glorious outcome also. Not that both Kardama Muni and Devahuti got lost in their concepts of me and mine, and they simply created some some arrangements for their living together and for their children. Finally, they died and continued in the cycle of repeated birth and death, and same thing was handed over to their children. No. We can see how the whole family life of Devahuti and Kardama Muni is highly glorified. So even that same family life which becomes a cause of bondage can become a cause of glorious life if it is centered around Krishna, if it is centered around spiritual development. So that is the main theme which we can understand, around which this description of Devahuti's and Kardama Muni's family life is being described. Otherwise, the Bhagavatam is meant for giving us spiritual knowledge. Why should they be talking about what arrangements a husband did for his wife, what kind of house he built, and what kind of arrangements he did? That is not something which is to be praised. That every human being is doing. Every married couple, they are doing. They are making elaborate arrangements. They are building big houses. They are building big palaces. All that is happening. So many kings have come and gone. They built wonderful palaces. There was one king, Shah Jahan, who built such a wonderful memorial for his wife. So those kind of things have been going on. So that is not something to be so much spoken about. But the Bhagavatam is speaking about the family life of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, because even though they are engaged in all such activities which externally looks like the ordinary activities of a common husband and wife, but still they never lost their focus on their spiritual life. They never lost their focus on their devotional service to Krishna, as we will see in the future verses. So therefore, the description of the way they led their life is given in the Bhagavatam, so that it can become an example for the common man, how if he has to become a grihastha, how he has to conduct his life. So today is being the day when Srila Prabhupada took sannyas in 1959. We will take this opportunity to read a little bit about the few recollections about Prabhupada's taking sannyas. These are some recollections, as well as some people have spoken some different things. So we'll read about this. This is from the interaction with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur during Srila Prabhupada's Grihastha days. This is an expert from our Srila Prabhupada, a friend to all, compiled by Moola Prakriti Mataji. And she has collated recollections by His Holiness Nayanananda Das Babaji Maharaj, who was a god brother of Srila Prabhupada. This recollection was recorded in an interview on March 9th, 1999. His Holiness Nayanananda Das Babaji Maharaj has since left this world, so he is no more. So we have only his recorded collection which is there. So Srila Nayanananda Das Babaji Maharaj recollects, the last year that our Gurudeva, he is referring to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, organized and performed Gauramandal Parikram. Thousands and thousands of pilgrims assembled at our Champahati Mandira. There was a whole village of tents in all directions. You might all remember, Prabhupada also mentioned this, about how he went and attended that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Every year he used to organize the Gauramandal Parikram and the Brajamandal Parikram on a very large scale. So there was a whole village of tents in all directions. They would go and put up tents at different locations, and during the day the whole group would travel by foot, going through various places of pastimes of the Supreme Lord. In Gauramandal, the places of pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Brajamandal, the places of pastime of Lord Krishna. And at evening they would set camp. A team would have gone ahead and they would set tent, and they would have made arrangements for cooking prasadam and distribution and all that. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj would personally go and oversee all the arrangements, whether everything is arranged properly, all the facilities are good for the pilgrims, etc. So he gave a lot of importance for this parikrama. So there was a whole village of tents in all directions. We can understand the magnitude of the event he was conducting. Today we conduct pilgrimages, we take 50 people, 100 people. So here, a whole village of tents in all directions had been set up. On the afternoon of the last day, one of our god brothers had arrived in Navadvipa, having returned from London by boat. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had sent him to London to preach. He had gone to preach, but had returned without meeting with full success. In the evening, while Guru Maharaj was giving pravachan, he explained that it was his earnest desire that the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should be spread in the Western countries. He told how it was the vision of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that this would happen, and it was also the last request of his mother, Srimati Bhagavati Devi, to him before she left this world. Consequently, he had been willing to take the lifeblood of the Gaudiya Math in funds to send devotees there to preach, but so far these attempts had been largely unsuccessful. At this moment in his talk, I noticed that something very mysterious was happening. This is being spoken by Nayananda Das Babaji Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Guru Maharaj was looking out at the large crowd of devotees, especially in the front, where all the sannyasis and brahmacharis in red cloth were there. At that time, Gaudiya Math was largely comprised of brahmacharis and sannyasis. There are a lot of sannyasis, all learned people. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur attracted the cream of the society at that time. So, in the front, there were all the sannyasis and brahmacharis in red cloth, in saffron cloth, they were all sitting in the front. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sitting and he was addressing all of them. Then he turned his head and looked over to his left side. He looked like this to the left side, where I was standing, where Nayananda Das Babaji Maharaj was standing. He was looking intently at someone and became silent for a long moment. So naturally, Nayananda Das Babaji Maharaj saw Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is looking at him and beyond him. You can understand by the vision of the person whether he is looking at me or somebody behind me. So Nayananda Das Babaji Maharaj turned around and looked at who is Guru Maharaj looking at. I happened to look behind me and I clearly saw that the person with whom he was making eye contact was Abhay Charana Prabhu, that is Srila Prabhupada. I thought that they were looking at each other in a special way. Then Guru Maharaj again addressed the audience in front of him. So he turned back. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj looking at Prabhupada, then he turned back. And he said, "But I have a prediction. However long in the future it may be, I predict that one of my disciples will cross the ocean and that devotee will bring back the whole world." So Nayananda Das Babaji Maharaj, he says, "I remembered this incident and Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj truly made it come to pass exactly in this way." Srila Nayananda Das Babaji Maharaj recollects, Abhay Prabhu behaved very humbly to everyone, even though he was senior in many ways to most of the people who came later during those 11 years. This is during the 11 years, meaning the time when he was in Allahabad and all those things, before Prabhupada took sannyas and went to the West. He would always pay dandavat to others just because they had taken initiation first. Though he had made that devoted connection with our Gurudeva first, that means in 1922. So up till 1933, Srila Prabhupada didn't take initiation. So during those 11 years, he is talking about that period. Though he had made the devoted connection with our Gurudeva first, he didn't formally take initiation until later on because of his family and his business. I clearly recall how very serious, simple and humble he was. Sometimes when I was in Calcutta, I would go to visit him at Sita Kanta Banerjee Lane, where he had his home and chemical business. Sat Prasangananda Brahmachari, who is 93 years old now, that is in 99, and Satisha Prabhu, who is 73, used to accompany me when I visited his house on Sita Kanta Banerjee Lane. He was very affectionate to us. He always welcomed guests into his home. He opened his house to any Vaishnavas from the Gaudiya Math, whether they were his godbrothers or young brahmacharis who weren't godbrothers and hadn't even been initiated. So this is how Prabhupada was conducting himself before he even got initiated. Now, for these some more excerpts from Transcendental Diary, Volume 2, by His Grace Harishauri Prabhu. Harishauri Prabhu writes, "You know my story, tea or me?" Srila Prabhupada asked me. Prabhupada was asking Harishauri Prabhu. He is recollecting this and writing in the diary. "No, Srila Prabhupada," I said, intrigued and eager to hear. He gave a chuckle, Srila Prabhupada. He was laughing and he said, "My wife, she was fond of drinking tea. So one day I told her, either you give up your tea drinking or you give up your husband." "Oh, then I'll give up my husband." Of course, she thought I was joking. Srila Prabhupada went on. "But a few days later, I left the house without telling anyone. I borrowed 10 rupees from a friend and bought a train ticket and I never returned." "Where did you go?" Harishauri Prabhu is asking Prabhupada. Prabhupada replied, "Somewhere, anywhere," he laughed. He never saw his wife again. So that was the beginning. Prabhupada took Vanaprastha and then later Prabhupada took sannyas. Now we'll read about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur urging Srila Prabhupada to take sannyas. This is an excerpt from Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita, Volume 1, by His Grace Satswarupa Prabhu. One night, Abhay had a striking dream, the same dream he had had several times before during his days as a householder. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared just as Abhay had known him, the tall, scholarly sannyasi, coming directly from the spiritual world, from Krishna's personal entourage. He called to Abhay and indicated that he should follow. Repeatedly he called and motioned. He asked Abhay to take sannyas. "Come," he urged, "become a sannyasi." Abhay awoke in a state of wonder. He thought of this instruction as another feature of the original instruction Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had given him at their first meeting in Calcutta, the same instruction that his spiritual master had later solidified in a letter: "Become an English preacher and spread Krishna consciousness throughout the Western world." Sannyasa was for that end. Otherwise, why would his spiritual master have asked him to accept it? Abhay reasoned that his spiritual master was saying, "Now take sannyas and you will actually be able to accomplish this mission. Formerly, the time was not right." Abhay deliberated cautiously. By taking sannyas, a Vaishnava dedicates his body, mind and words totally to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, renouncing all other engagements. He was doing that already. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had offered sannyas to his leading disciples so that they could continue his mission. They hadn't done it. Preaching in the West had proved perilous even for the Gaudiya Math's most recognized sannyasis. How could he, a mere householder, presume he could succeed where the others had failed? He was hesitant. The helpless, incapable feeling he had expressed in his Viraha Ashtaka was there. But now his spiritual master was beckoning him over all other considerations, even over natural humility. Now, although he was elderly and alone, the desire to preach, just as his spiritual master had preached, remained within him, a fierce, though sometimes quietly expressed determination. The Vedic standard and the example set by the previous acharyas was that if one wanted to lead a preaching movement, sannyasa was required. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had taken sannyas to facilitate his missionary work. Lord Chaitanya had taken sannyas to further the Sankirtan movement. Of course, Lord Chaitanya was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when his young students had been disrespectful towards him, treating him as an ordinary man, he had taken sannyas. Because a sannyasi is automatically respected, Lord Chaitanya's acceptance of sannyas was a calculated tactic. As soon as he began traveling throughout India as a sannyasi, he immediately attracted thousands of followers to the Sankirtana movement. Abhay turned to Keshav Maharaj in Mathura, and Keshav Maharaj told Abhay to take sannyas immediately. After corresponding with Tirtha Maharaj, Abhay had felt some uncertainty about accepting sannyas, and now that he was being encouraged so strongly, he resisted. But Keshav Maharaj was insistent. Srila Prabhupada says this, I was sitting alone in Vrindavan, writing. My god brother insisted to me, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, you must do it. Without accepting the renounced order of life, nobody can become a preacher. So he insisted. Not he insisted. Practically my spiritual master insisted. He wanted me to become a preacher. So he forced me through his god brother. You accept. So unwillingly I accepted. On October 21st, 1968, on the occasion of the disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada's Sannyas Guru, Bhakti Prajnana Keshav Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada recalls in a lecture given in ISKCON, Seattle. Srila Prabhupada, one has to accept the renounced order from another person who is in renounced order. So I never thought that I shall accept this renounced order of life. In my family life, when I was in the midst of my wife and children, sometimes I was dreaming my spiritual master that he is calling me and I was following him. When my dream was over, I was thinking, I was little horrified. Oh, Guru Maharaj wants me to become sannyasi. How can I accept sannyas? At that time, I was feeling not very satisfaction that I have to give up my family and have to become a mendicant. At that time, it was a horrible feeling. Sometimes I was thinking, no, I cannot take sannyas. But again, I saw the same dream. So in this way, I was fortunate. My Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada begins to cry in a choked voice, Prabhupada says. My Guru Maharaj pulled me out from this material life. I have not lost anything. He was so kind upon me. I have gained. I left 3 children. I have got now 300 children. So I am not loser. This is material conception. We think that we shall be loser by accepting Krishna. Nobody is loser. I say from a practical experience. I was thinking that how can I accept this renounced order of life? I cannot accept so much trouble. But I retired from my family life. I was sitting alone in Vrindavan writing books. So this, my god brother, he insisted me. He is referring to Bhakti Prajnana Keshav Maharaj. Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, this title was given in my family life. It was offered to me by the Vaishnava society. So he insisted me, not he insisted me. Practically my spiritual master insisted me through him that you accept. Because without accepting the renounced order of life, nobody can become a preacher. So he wanted me to become a preacher. So he forced me through this god brother, you accept. So unwillingly I accepted. And then I remembered that he wanted me to go to the Western country. So I am feeling now very much obliged to this god brother that he carried out the wish of my spiritual master and enforced me to accept this sannyasa order. Some more excerpts from the Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 1 by Satswarupa Prabhu, how Prabhupada accepts sannyasa. Keshava Gaudiya Mutt was located in the midst of one of Mathura's downtown bazaars. Its main entrance, an arched doorway, led into a courtyard open to the sky through a metal grating above. Abhay Babu entered the matha dressed in white, but he would soon be leaving dressed in saffron as Swami. Abhay had been living as a renunciant for 9 years. There was no need for him to observe a ceremony or to proclaim himself a sadhu by changing to a saffron dress. That means practically from 1950 to 1959, he had been living as a renunciant. But it was a parampara system that a man take Tridandi sannyasa at the end of his life. He was aware of the cheating sannyasis. Even in Vrindavan, he had seen so-called sadhus who did not preach but simply spent their days hunting for chapatis. Some swamis of Vrindavan even indulged illicitly in what they had supposedly come here to reject, sex life. Such persons were making a mockery of sannyasa. And there were the caste Goswamis also who lived like ordinary householders, running temples as a business to support their families and accepting honor and donations from the public on the false basis of birth. Abhay knew of these abuses of sannyas, but he also knew the real purpose of sannyas. Sannyas was for preaching. On the morning of September 17, 1959, In the 50 by 25-foot DT room on the second floor of the Keshavji Mutt, a group of devotees sat before the deities of Radha Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. The deities were colorfully dressed in royal clothing and silver crowns. It's a humble setting, 50 feet by 25-foot DT room. So probably something like this hall they were sitting. Can you imagine that? And such a historical moment it was. Abhay sat on a mat of kusha grass beside 90-year-old Sanatana, also to receive sannyasa that day. Sitting opposite the two candidates, Narayan Maharaj, Keshav Maharaj's disciple, prepared to conduct the ceremony of mantras and offerings of grains and ghee into the fire. Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji, Abhay's god brother, known for sweet singing, played mridanga and sang Vaishnav bhajans. Sitting on a raised asan, His Holiness Keshav Maharaj presided. Narayan Maharaj chanted the required mantras and then sat back silently while Keshav Maharaj lectured. Then, to everyone's surprise, Keshav Maharaj asked Abhay to speak. Abhay had not expected this. As he looked around at the gathering of devotees, he understood that the common language was Hindi. Only Keshav Maharaj and a few others spoke English. Yet, he knew he must speak in English. After Abhay's speech, each initiate received a sannyasa danda. Again, this is actually unprecedented. The sannyasa guru, when he is giving sannyas to someone, he gives the speech. He doesn't ask the sannyas candidate to come and give speech. But Keshav Maharaj knew that Prabhupada was not an ordinary person, so he invited him to speak. He knew. That time itself, people knew. All his god brothers knew that Prabhupada was a great preacher. That's why they had given him the title Bhakti Vedanta. That means he was so erudite in the Shastras. After Abhay's speech, each initiate received a sannyasa danda, the traditional head-high staff made of 4 bamboo rods bound together and completely enwrapped in saffron cloth. They were given their sannyasa garments, 1 piece of saffron cloth for a dhoti, 1 for a top piece, and 2 strips for underwear. They also received tulasi neck beads and the sannyasa mantra. Keshav Maharaj said that Abhay would now be known as Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj and that Sanatana would be Muni Maharaj. After the ceremony, the 2 new sannyasis posed for a photo, standing on either side of their sannyasa guru who sat in a chair. That's the photo which you are seeing. One seated is His Holiness Keshav Maharaj, and one side is Prabhupada, on the other side is Muni Maharaj. Keshav Maharaj didn't impose any strictures on Abhay. He simply encouraged him to go on preaching. Yet Abhay knew that to become A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami did not mean merely that he was giving up family, home comforts and business. That he had done 5 years ago. Changing from white cloth to saffron cloth, from Abhay Babu to Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj had a special significance. It was a mandate he had required, the irrevocable commitment. Now, it was only a matter of time before Bhaktivedanta Swami would travel to the west as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had ordained. This was Bhaktivedanta Swami's realization of his new sannyasa status. The Gaudiya Patrika, the newsletter, the Gaudiya Patrika's account of the sannyasa initiation included a biographical sketch of Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, listing the major events of his life. The article concluded, seeing his enthusiasm and ability to write articles in Hindi, English and Bengali, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj gave him the instruction to take Tridandi sannyas. For nearly 1 year, he had been ready to accept sannyas. In the month of Bhadra, on the day on which Vishwarupa accepted sannyas, today is Vishwarupa Mahotsav also. This is the day on which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's elder brother, Vishwarupa, he accepted sannyas. So on the day on which Vishwarupa accepted sannyas, Bhaktivedanta Swami at the Sri Keshavji Gaudiya Mutt accepted sannyas from the founder of the Vedanta Samiti, Bhakti Prajnana Keshav Maharaj. Seeing him accept his ashrama of renunciation, seeing this pastime for accepting the renounced order of life, we have attained great affection and enthusiasm. One of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, His Grace Rupa Vilasa Prabhu, recalls, we were spending a little time with Prabhupada's god brother, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, with whom he had a very affectionate relationship. he was telling us the story of Prabhupada taking sannyas, and he said, the ceremony was going on, with Keshav Maharaj overseeing and conducting the initiation. Narayan Maharaj was chanting the mantras and I was doing bhajan. But as is my habit, I got a little too loud. So Keshav Maharaj was making a gesture with his hand, palm down, as if to say, not so loud, volume down, like we say, mic volume down, we do like this. Not so loud. Krishnadas Babaji said, and as soon as he would turn his head, your Prabhupada would go like this. Turning his palm indicating to chant louder. Then Krishnadas Babaji laughed as he always did, and he said, it was then that I knew he would be the leader of the Hare Krishna movement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Except from Srila Prabhupada at Radha Damodar by Mahanidhi Swami. After Srila Prabhupada taking sannyas, Narayan Maharaj recalls, I would visit Srila Prabhupada many times while he was staying at Radha Damodar temple between 1962 to 1964. One time, I went there and he was sitting on the floor on a torn quilt. After sitting down on my chadar, we both discussed the Srimad-Bhagavatam. There was no bed in Prabhupada's room. He was sleeping on the floor. You can imagine. On another occasion, Narayan Maharaj recalls, often we would have kirtan in his room at Radha Damodar. Prabhupada played mridanga, I played kartals. He used to tell me how he was planning to go to America and other Western countries. He said, I want to preach as Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, has ordered me, and I want to publish Back to Godhead in huge scale and preach in Western countries. If there will be need, I will establish boarding facilities for interested people. If they want, I will give meat also, and egg also, and wine also. I believe that after hearing Harinam Sankirtan and the Shiksha instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then certainly they will reject all these things and surely they will become pure Vaishnavas. You see Prabhupada's vision? My God. Going to any extent to preach. Srila Prabhupada teaches by example. This is the last, this one. Except from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, volume 4. In Nairobi, Srila Prabhupada demonstrated how a sannyasi should preach. For 1 month, he strictly followed Vedic tradition by staying only 3 days or less in the home of each of his Indian hosts. Then, although his hosts always provided him good food and comfortable accommodation, he would move on to the next place. This was the rule for sannyasis, Prabhupada said. It kept them from becoming attached to bodily comforts and from inconveniencing their hosts. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Sannyas Day ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.